All right, let's get it. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. We are going back to back to back. Triple header here. Just finished up Florida State Live. Go check that out. Always a great hour with Big Game James Coleman and Georgitis from the Renegade Report. Previous to that, of course, Cam Underwood, State of the U, and myself breaking down Miami football. And, of course, Miami fans are hurting right now because they are looking at the CFP rankings and saying, what about us? We beat Notre Dame. And, of course, we will continue to have that debate there and here, even though I'm not necessarily the most popular over there when I state, here's the premise, the disclaimer. I rank Miami ahead of Notre Dame. Yes, I acknowledge the win. I recognize the win. I honor the victory on the field head-to-head. However, I'm just saying there can be a case made for, not necessarily a great case for Notre Dame, but there is a case there, a legitimate case to rank Notre Dame ahead of Miami. I don't agree with it, but it can be made. But Vanderbilt, Texas, BYU, Alabama versus Miami, we've got a collection of teams. And I will be the most shocked person in America if we get to the conclusion of this. And there are college football playoff rankings that exclude any team that does not have a legitimate gripe. I will be able to sit here and we will all sit here together. So mark this down. Sunday, I believe noon Eastern time is when the selections will go out and be announced. So we will sit here together, go through the rankings, and take your calls, your comments, your questions, the whole deal, as we have a tradition of doing so here at the Voice of College Football. Sunday, for the selection show, we'll all be here together, and I will be able to make a case for at least one, if not two, if not three, if not four programs that missed the college football playoff. So let's see if it ended right now. We would have Texas, Vanderbilt, Miami in particular on the outside. And I could make a clear case for any one of those three teams to make the college football playoff. Absolutely, I could. So we're going to go through National Signing Day. Of course, don't forget about that. I am not going to claim to be a recruiting expert. I probably know less about it this year than I ever have just because of other obligations. But we will go through the recruiting rankings, and to a certain extent with the transfer portal and all that goes on during the month of December, that has been pushed to the side. But there are some definite narratives out there involving schools like, USC. I don't know, on the opposite end of the spectrum, Penn State. Some rough times ahead possibly for Penn State, and maybe the choice to fire James Franklin may not have been the best considering what they've not been able to do in replacing him. Or maybe they should have had a better plan or a better idea of who they could have gotten to replace James Franklin and been a little bit more sure of their backup plan. With that, let's go to the phone lines. We got our buddy Christian stopping by. Christian, what's going on?
What's up, Mark? It's been a minute. I hope you're doing well. Love all the content you guys are putting out. And again, as I know that we still got a few weeks in the year, but as this year does get to a close, want to just say how much I love and appreciate you guys for the Mississippi State opportunity. That being said, I want to talk some recruiting, man.
Let's do it. What's on your mind?
I want to look at three different classes, not like kind of overall, but without every single recruit. Obviously, you know me, I'm an Alabama guy, so I kind of want to get your thoughts on them today. USC's at the very top at number one, jumping a couple different teams, signing 34 guys today. And then have you gotten a chance to really look at what Mississippi State brought in? I thought they did pretty well. 29 players come in for Jeff Lebby, 26 overall, a top 30 class, and really especially hitting it on the defensive side, 2 edge rushers, a defensive lineman. There's a lot to really get into, but I don't know where you want to start with that as far as maybe your thoughts on USC being at the top, and then maybe what you've heard or seen from Alabama.
So USC's done an amazing job, obviously, but I'll point out a few things here. First of all, they have 35 commits.
Hmm.
So if you look at the anybody who goes on 247 Sports, and you can go to the same page that I'm looking at or attempting to look at, but of course they threw up an ad that to break down these classes. So everybody do this. So you see the ranking, and obviously that's a combination of the number of players signed and the quality of those players and their individual ratings. But if you go down here and you go to the average player ranking,
Hmm.
there's where you get a true value of the quality of the class, because
Mm.
then that takes out the number of commits. And look who has the number one class when you just look at the highest ranking per player, and that's Alabama's
Right.
number one. And USC still has a great class, but they're down here about number 7. So I
Yeah.
don't really consider them to have the number one class in the nation, but they had a great class. And there were a lot of people that when USC emerged as the number one class in the nation, and that was way back uh, in the spring. That was not long after the last season ended. Most people predicted that USC would not be able to hang on to that ranking, and they did. So they've been able to carry it all the way through. Even though they had a strong season, they didn't reach their goals and get to the playoff. So, and that's usually what obviously resonates with people. But Lincoln Riley's maybe stabilized things at USC, and they have brought in the type general manager and NIL structure that is putting them in a position to start to catch up with some of the elites.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're still in a really good position, no doubt. I think that I feel like USC, and this honestly, it applies with everybody, and I say this all the time. Recruiting is just half of the job as a coach. Lincoln Riley has to put these guys out there, and he got some really big gems in this class. He's got some guys, especially on defense, on the defensive line, and some linebackers. And obviously, that's not his strong suit. It's really on the offensive side for him. But I mean, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on USC. Um, I'll let you add to that, and then I do wanna talk about Alabama for sure.
Well, I gave you my 2 cents on USC, so Alabama.
Alright, let's go. So, 20 players today signed their letter of intent. Highest rated guy was Xavier Griffin on the edge. I think they hit the defensive side of the ball pretty good. 3 5 stars, 2 of them on defense, and then Xavier Crowell, the running back. Um, It's I think what's really cool for me is having a top 5 class, which look, I said this on my show today, Mark, but even though it's not the same Bama that we've been used to for the past decade and a half, obviously with Nick Saban, let's just face it, he's out of the picture. You got Kalen DeBoer, and he's got a 10-2 regular season record this year. He's got a 9-3 from last year, 9-4 if you count the bowl loss. So since he's been there, he's about what, 19, 20 wins and then only 6 losses. And he's keeping it top 5 overall in recruiting. And in a way, I could be wrong on this. I kind of have heard and viewed him as he's more on the offensive side because of quarterback play and stuff. And you've kind of seen that be, in a way, our strong suit this year. So what does he do? He goes out and he gets some good guys on defense, but he also gets a couple weapons, a quarterback, um, just bringing in all these guys. But also, it boils down to, Mark, that these players have to choose their school. They got to meet with the coaches and stuff, and maybe the coaches persuade them and NIL and everything that plays a factor. But I think with guys like Jordan Edmonds, Xavier Crowell, Xavier Griffin, like, Alabama is still one of those top programs that you want to go play for. Georgia is still one of those top programs you want to play for. And neither one of those teams, I mean, Georgia made the playoffs, but neither one of those teams were in the Natty last year. It was Ohio State and Notre Dame. And yeah, you still want to go play for programs like that. But I feel like even with a program like Alabama, like it's a new era. It's the next head coach up, it's the next man up, but people still see it and want to be a part of it. What's your thoughts?
Yes, there is only one Nick Saban, and he is, by most accounts, the greatest head coach of all time in college football. I think it's somewhat
Mhm.
debatable, but basically, he's the best. And so, to expect anyone to maintain, especially considering that we'll never know, but it would have been difficult for him to maintain his own standard going into a 12-team college football playoff era and an NIL era. And that's one of the reasons why
True.
he's no longer the head coach at Alabama. He just didn't want to deal with all of that at this point in his career. Not that he wouldn't have done it and done it effectively and been nearly as dominant, but to be able to keep up the pace that he kept up for 15 years, which was basically winning a national championship almost every other year and dominating the sport more so than any other school. Uh, that's an impossible standard for anybody. They could have hired anyone, and it would have been difficult to keep up with that. They could have hired Kirby
Right.
Smart, and it would have been difficult for him to keep up with that pace for sure. So uh, but Nick Saban, for all the credit that's due him and all the credit I just gave him, Alabama was Alabama before Nick Saban. It was arguably the greatest program in the history of college football before Nick Saban. Now, obviously,
Of course.
it was undergoing a bad 10 years generally prior to. So he had to rebuild that reputation, rebuild that brand, and function it just as well. So Alabama going forward, as long as they made a strong hire, was going to be able to still be one of the elites, one of the 5 or 6 at the top of college football. And even though we'll see how they play in the SEC championship game and how well they do in a playoff that they should make, whether they
Mhm.
win or lose, they should. Uh, so they're not where they were with Nick Saban, but they're still they have not fallen off that far. So they're still Alabama. Kalen DeBoer is obviously a proven winner wherever he's been. And so I'm not surprised that Alabama still maintains one of the best recruiting classes in college football because they still have an excellent head coach, an excellent program, reputation, brand, and resources as well.
No doubt, man. I think you took all the words out of my mouth as far as what I would say on that. I mean, I guarantee the people of the Bear Bryant era would have said after he passed, like, man, we just may never see this again. And then, of course, you have the 92 natty with Stallings against Miami, and then you had to wait another 17 years, but Nick Saban came along and gave us one of the greatest runs, if not the greatest run that we've probably ever seen. And I feel like with those 2 runs, if you're a recruit out there, you kinda get your hopes up that, you know, not necessarily a no matter who the coach is type of thing, but it's like, okay, look, they still gotta have a little bit of life in them, and they're looking for a strong player like me, and I can be a difference maker for the Crimson Tide, so why not go to a program like that? Um, and if they don't wanna go to Alabama, they feel like Georgia's the place to go or Ohio State or whatever, by all means, like, I get it. I do. But I don't know, man. I feel like there's just such an impact, and it's probably not gonna last forever, but it's still probably gonna last a little while longer of what some of these coaches and other players that came before today have left on the Crimson Tide, and I think you're kinda seeing that even with Kalen DeBoer's recruiting so far. He had a pretty good class last year, and then obviously here in '26, good start.
Absolutely. Well,
Yes,
anything else,
sir.
Christian?
No, just gonna celebrate 6 years on the channel next week for Ballard Sports Media. My birthday
Nice.
coming up, so looking forward to that. And I'll have to keep in touch with you guys. I hope everyone has an awesome Christmas season, and go check out the Mississippi State channel. For real, what are you doing? We recently hit 100 subs. We're trying to get it monetized by the end of next year if we can. Hopefully sooner than that. So we love you. God bless. Hail State and roll tide. I'll say that.
Thanks, Christian. Appreciate you being here, man.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. Much going on with the coaching carousel, of course. I don't know that we've seen anything like it in college football any year, any time. And to the extent that on Sunday, of course, we had 3 coaching changes just in the SEC among the top of the conference: LSU, Florida, Auburn. We've got Kyle Loomis stopping by to talk Auburn football with us. You can catch Kyle on E2C Network. And Kyle, we've been through this before.
Yes, we have.
And here we go this time around. And we knew that it was coming. Now I will hit you with this right out of the gate. How did the Auburn family take the hiring of Alex Golish?
I think it went pretty well, about as well as can be expected. Certainly the event that I attended, the energy was high for something new, something fresh, going with another offensive mind. I will remind people that the last 3 that we've tried have all been offensive mind guys. I was of the opinion that we should try someone on the defensive front, with a defensive mindset this time around, just to do something a little bit extra different. But in terms of the overall response to this, I think it's been pretty positive. I think there's a increased amount of cautious optimism amongst the fan base. I think we're optimistic by nature as a fan base anyway. But I think there's some things when you dig into Coach Golish that you're going to like about what he does, especially getting back to running the football. With that, frankly, for me, the day that we heard his opening press conference, as a person, just whether it's Auburn football or not, I prefer a much more focused running attack, and we were not getting that in the RPO-based system of Hugh Freeze, which I questioned from the very beginning was going to work or satisfy Auburn fans. So that sounds like what we might be getting back to a little bit with Coach Golish. So there's that, and I think we're here to talk about him as the hire, but one of the biggest things that he did, which maybe you want to talk about in more detail, bringing Coach Durkin along with him for the ride. That's about as good as you can start in what's been a pretty tumultuous time for Auburn football right now for a new head coach.
Yeah, so the one reservation that is a very, very generalized approach by media critics, fans, whomever, is when they see a program like Auburn bring in a group of 5 coach.
Yeah.
So the question is, can a group of 5 coach? And then there are anecdotal situations that are brought up with other coaches at places like Florida State in particular recently. And obviously Auburn's initial hire prior to Hugh Freeze coming in from the group of 5. And that reservation that, is this guy good enough to handle a big time job?
Yeah, and I think it's a fair criticism. Auburn is a program that is not a stepping stone. It is a destination place. People are going to push back on that and say that the results as of late certainly don't indicate that, but that's why you got to operate in context, not just in the current, and you get the whole story of Auburn. You at Auburn should be able to pull in a power 4, whatever, 5 at the time back in the day, coach, if they want to be there, and if there's an opportunity to mesh that well. Auburn's had its crack at a couple of those, and certainly there were some options this time. Last before that, we were part of the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes the last go around. I think certainly it's fair to be a little bit cautious about, is this person ready to make the next step up to actually playing power conference football, specifically the SEC? That's a fair criticism. But I think when you have that criticism, that you've also got to be able to look at the whole story of his coaching track record and see what he has done. And certainly he has had that experience as an offensive coordinator in the SEC, at Tennessee, and in a variety of other places in the Big Ten as well. So, excuse me, just a variety of places. He have certainly coming from that particular group of four, the smaller conference narrative is fine to be concerned about, but I wouldn't just that be the thing that we focus on for Coach Golish.
So yeah, this is what I can appreciate in a situation like this, and that is the pushback against the temptation to just hire a name just to appease the fan base, to say
Yes.
we've got a name and not really review and really press into what is this guy all about?
Mhm.
What is he going to do with his program? What type of leader is he? Are his best days ahead of him or behind him?
Sure.
And really just be so blown away by, oh, it's a name and he's been somewhere and he's won something, that you don't, with conviction, hire the individual that you vetted and really believe, okay, regardless of what, was, the school on his gear on the sideline at his last school, we're really evaluating this guy as a coach and a leader of a program, and not that there aren't going to be people around the state that are going to say, who's that?
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the determining factor. Now, whether that plays out as being the right choice, none of us know that. We can all have our opinions right now, but none of us have it. These people that say that they know, they knew he was going to fail, or they knew he was going to succeed. No, none of us know that.
Right.
Unless Nick Saban's coming back from retirement, there are no sure things, or you can lure, Kirby Smart from across the state line.
Yeah.
There's only a couple of sure things in the sport, and technically they wouldn't even be sure things. So, it seems like a good hire. And I know that down in South Florida that he was doing good things, took over. You like to see a guy that took over a program that wasn't doing so well, that was in a bad spot, and he lifted it, rather than we had situations like Arkansas hired Ryan Silverfield. He may be a great coach, but he succeeded a line of successful Memphis coaches and was kind of handed a program in good shape, versus, again, an Alex Golish that takes over like a 1-2 win football program and is able to elevate them.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. When you're evaluating who's going to be the right fit at the right time, you got to look at what they've done with what they were handed. And certainly, I think that's a very strong case for Coach Golish and what he has accomplished at South Florida. I would also argue on that same line of thinking that Coach Golish is inheriting a program that is in a far better state than Coach Freeze inherited. And that's not to say that this was the wrong decision to fire Coach Freeze or anything like that. But we can just all, I think, look at the eye test of Auburn back 3 years ago and the Auburn currently, and you're going to go, yeah, this is a lot better of a program. Now, what happens in a transition period, we'll see how that plays out. Certainly with signing day today, certainly some headway was made towards securing some of that future. But I like that track record, that he took a program that was in the dumpster and progressively, maybe not just had this instant success. And maybe that even shows it a little bit more, Mark. If they don't have that instant success, maybe they just inherited something. It took him 3 seasons to get to the point where they're at 9 wins right now. You couple that, like we talked about, with some SEC experience and power conference experience around the way. I think it's a solid hire. And a lot of the grades that I've seen people offer of their opinions about this hire, you're going to find it somewhere in the B+ to A- range if people are doing on that type of grade scale. And I don't have any problems with that. I think the Auburn fan base has cautious optimism, but I think the larger college football space has a cautious optimism about this as well, because really that's what's missing. You unlock the offense, and this is a new offensive mind. You got Coach Durkin still. Who knows what can happen if he finally gets this offensive scheme figured out.
Kyle, I only bring up the Alabama game not to drudge up bad memories, because you know how media works now.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday. That was last Saturday. It's like that was eons ago. Nobody cares about that now, unless you maybe wear the crimson or you wear the orange and the blue.
Sure.
But for me, it's obviously arguably the greatest rivalry in college football. And it was just, again, I'm watching this game, and it was such an entertaining game. And no, Auburn was never in the lead, so it wasn't a back and forth, but they were within one score. They made the nice
Right there.
comeback to get right there. And I'm just watching this thinking, if you didn't know what the records were, you didn't know what the names on the jerseys were in terms of the team affiliation, you wouldn't know who the better team was, basically. You would, who knows?
Yeah.
But I was just sitting there thinking, how is Auburn going to blow this game? Like, I'm almost positive they are going to lose this game. I'm just waiting to see. And of course, they're driving down the field and blah, 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 and we're ready for a dramatic finish, and they fumble in the red zone, and there's the ball game. And a litany of mistakes before that, they could have really put the game in their hands. But you watch this football team, aside from the mistakes, and obviously every team makes mistakes, but at inordinate times and too many of them. Although I got to say, and I'm all over the place, I understand,
that's fine,
Kyle, as I'm leading into this, it did surprise me at one point. I think it was mentioned several times late in the game that Auburn was one of the best teams in the country in regards to fewest offensive turnovers. So that kind of surprised me going into the game. But you can just see the talent on this team. You can see that they are this close from being like a 10-win football team.
You're triggering the Auburn fans right now with that phrase, by the way. Oh, Mark, you said a lot in there, but you said a lot of good things. And so I got 2 points off of that I want to expand on with you. First was the concept of Auburn being this close and this rivalry, right? You said it's the greatest rivalry in college football. I would argue it's the greatest rivalry in sports. I know that's a big hot take.
I said it was arguably, if you understand my allegiance, I may not necessarily vote at number one, but arguably the greatest. Yes.
That's fair. But I think my argument for why this game is going to always be the greatest rivalry in college sports at bare minimum is because of what you just saw. You said it. This team, again, is inferior to Alabama on paper, not as inferior as to some of the other teams the last two times they've been at Jordan-Hare. Those two teams, the fact that they had a shot to beat Alabama the last 2 times they're in Jordan-Hare, it just still baffles me to this day. This team did not shock me that they were in it at the end because they've been doing that all season against better teams. And so you put that in there with this discussion about Michigan and Ohio State, and I think I've said my piece here on that about how that's over posturing, calling yourself the game and all this kind of stuff. Even when there's a team in this rivalry that is not up to par with the other one, at least at that current time, this is what happens. There's very few recent blowouts. They happen more so in Tuscaloosa. I guess that's just, the way. But when it comes to Jordan-Hare and this Iron Bowl, no matter these last 3 times that Auburn's been in Jordan-Hare with these 3 teams that have been inferior at the very least on paper, it showed up and showed out and had a shot to win the ball game. I had a blast attending it and covering it because it was just it's exactly what it's always been billed as, the greatest rivalry in college sports, because both teams, you throw it, it's the overused phrase, you throw the records out, you throw what's happened out, just go play ball, play for the state, and play for that rivalry. I mean, it's good stuff, man. I had a second point, but I can't even remember what it was at this point because you got me on that.
Well, certainly, if it comes to mind, blurt it out. But I'm going to hit you with this before we let you go, because it is National Signing Day.
Yeah.
So 17 signed. If you look at the player rating, it's a little bit better class than otherwise, with 28 ranked there, but 35th if you take everything into consideration. So that's obviously not up to Auburn standards, but anytime you've got a coaching transition, it's kind of difficult to maintain a class. So what are your thoughts about the haul for this season?
Yeah, a little bit of clarification, because I haven't checked up on the Auburn football accounts yet to see if they've confirmed if one of the flips that they had committed, Tavion Branch, Penn State flip, but I don't think his signature has come in as I'm aware yet. But that would, if you count that, and then you've got Jace Matthews, who's sitting out there with his decision still looming on Friday. He pushed it back from today to Friday. Then you would have that 17 and that 35th ranked class right now based off of 247 or 35-36 based off 247 Sports is what I'm looking at right now. I think this is one of those classes where I don't want people to get in the habit of just saying, well, it is what it is, right? Like, this is a year where it's a transition. You're basically dismissing all this talent that is potentially coming in just because you're kind of chalking it up to it's a transition year like that. And certainly this isn't where Auburn typically is going to fall in the recruiting rankings, things like that. There were a couple of decommits, Braylon Womack being one of those going over to Mississippi State. A couple of Peyton Falzone. We kind of traded Penn State swap flips back and forth today, it seemed like. So I actually don't think you can hold this against Coach Golish in any way, because he had literally he was in Auburn on Monday at lunchtime, and signing day was basically less than 2 days later. So he's trying to salvage this class together. He's already kind of openly said it, from what I've seen, that our focus is on the current roster, hold together this class the best we can, and then go really hit it hard in the transfer portal to fill the spots that we need. I think today had some surprises for Auburn, some really things to feel good about. Shadarius Tootle, who you see on screen right now, Jaquez Wilkes. Those are two big names that I think holding on to those really makes Auburn fans feel good about the security of what was left of this particular class. But the way you can look at this, if you're an Auburn fan, don't hold a coach against Coach Golish, but do you really give the dude some credit if these flips, especially had today, kind of end up working out? And even though the numbers aren't as great, the ratings, the numbers of this class, when we're looking at this class 2 to 3 years down the line, hey, maybe this is something that, kind of was a little bit diamond in the rough, even though there wasn't a lot of flash about it. We won't know that until down the line, but I guess that's kind of where my head is at, bouncing around in some different ways about it. This was very much a different signing day than anyone that I have experienced covering for Auburn football, just because of I hate to say it, but the lack of excitement around it that there typically is because of the transition. But that shouldn't dissuade you from being excited about the individuals.
Absolutely. And it's Kyle Loomis again, E2C Network. So it's right a click away right here on YouTube. So catch Kyle right there. And Kyle, any particular scheduling notes that we should know about in terms of your programming coming up?
Sure. Okay. We're all about sports, culture, family, all within the Auburn experience. Certainly with football season done, you'll see a little bit less football stuff, but it'll still be there. Obviously, basketball's taking center stage right now. If you enjoy that, we'll have post-game shows for most of the men's basketball games this season. But whether it's Auburn sports, culture, family, we got you covered.
Awesome. Kyle, thanks for dropping by, breaking down the Golish hire and the recruiting class.
Thank you for having me again.
All right, good stuff from Kyle Loomis. We always appreciate Kyle stopping by, talking to Auburn, and maybe Auburn will one day again be a power in the SEC, because it's been a long time. Last winning record at Auburn, 2020. Now you watch them play and you think, they can play with just about anyone, but they're going to blow the game somehow. They are a better version of Nebraska. They are a more talented, more NFL players version of Nebraska. It's what Auburn has been. All right, we got calls coming in. We've got Trent stopping by. Trent, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? Good to talk to you.
Oh, Trent.
Yeah.
We appreciate you being here, and I apologize if I'm a bit off guard here, because this is Trent from your platform is
Kirkwood and Dunn.
Kirkwood and Dunn.
Yeah.
And you cover Indiana athletics or just Indiana football?
We've mainly focused on Indiana football. There's definitely a void in just the coverage space for a while, but we do all Indiana sports. But and talk about the Big Ten overall. So I heard you at the beginning of the show talking about all the teams missing out on the college football playoffs, and it seems like a lot of teams south of the Mason-Dixon line need some handouts this year, and us up here in the north are earning our way into the big dance.
Well, yeah, there's not too much drama in the Big Ten, because 3 are going to make it and nobody else has a shot. So no drama in the Big Ten. And there are decisions to be made elsewhere. And of course, Indiana was one of those polarizing teams last year. because of the record versus the schedule, but we will not go back to 2024. It all worked out well, and Curt Cignetti definitely backed up what happened in 2024 with a even better 2025. So let's start there. Before I pick on you or your cohort in particular about a comment that I saw that seems to be blowing up on X, because I don't catch much of this stuff for as much as I'm involved in college football and have been for a number of years. And I do apologize because you popped up on the screen and I did not realize that it was you. And I just let everyone know in the audience, I invited Trent and or his co-host to join us after I saw a post on X. You know what? Let's get that out of the way. Let's start there. And I know you're going to have to speak for your co-host here.
That's okay.
But I believe I can.
I'm happy to.
I believe I already have this.
Yeah.
So I was a bit perplexed, annoyed, agitated, all those things by this comment that we're going to play here in just a second. Let me find it. Got it right here. Okay, folks. So.
Like you need sunglasses and a mask to like rolling your eyes when they're going, oh wait, and then like all this type of stuff. It's coming.
They're the worst. I can't stand them. They think they're just like God's gift to college football, and it's just like you're not even close, really, if we're being honest. And listen, Indiana is about to be God's gift to college football. Thank you to our Lord and Savior Curt Cignetti. But like,
amen.
Historically, good program. You're not Notre Dame. You're not USC. You're not Alabama. You're not even like Florida, kind of like. You're not even in a way LSU. Like, no. You're not. You're just kind of the best of the Big Ten East for years. So like, pipe it down some. I'm not excited about it, but I do expect that the Indiana.
Okay. So
yeah.
Hang on just a second. Let me cut this off. There we go.
Yeah.
So let me start with this, Trent. So for me personally, I conducted this show for a long, long time and nobody knew who I rooted for. And then I finally let it out. I grew up in Ohio. I'm an Ohio State fan. So everybody's comfortable with that and has known that for years. I don't know if you're familiar at all with what we do here or have ever heard of us or anything, but
I know the Indiana guys. They're great.
Yeah, they do a great job. They're amazing. Bradley and Alec. So I have no issue whatsoever with the beginning of that in terms of making fun of other fan bases. We could all make fun of any fan base. And it's at least my viewpoint that every fan base has classy fans, delusional fans, knowledgeable fans, stupid fans, ignorant fans. It runs the gamut. Complete homers or complete pessimists. They all have them to various degrees. And so anybody that's are there obnoxious Ohio State fans, idiot Ohio State, all of that. Yes. I have named Ohio State fans as the dumb fan base of the day here on more than one occasion. Absolutely. So I had no issue. That wasn't it. It's when we started to make comparisons about Ohio State's status in college football that I found this to be quite ludicrous. Because we're talking about, especially, we're bringing up LSU and Florida, let alone Notre Dame, which Ohio State, I think, has beaten 6 straight times and won something like close to 20 major bowl games since Notre Dame before last season, won a major bowl. Like, there's no comparison between what these two teams and schools have done in the last 30 years. It's laughable. Ohio State has the best winning percentage in college football the last 10 years, the last 20 years, the last 50 years, the last 70 years. And you know what? The greatest percentage in college football history. Like, we are talking about, arguably, I'm not going to say that Ohio State's the greatest program in history, but I would make that argument. I think it's arguable. I think there's 3 or 4 that you could argue. But they certainly have a claim as being one of those and have the argument as the #1 program in history. So to place programs like Florida and LSU over Ohio State, to me, is completely laughable.
Well, Mark, first of all, I do want to just apologize for my lighting because I'm buying all new podcast equipment from all the clicks I've been getting from Ohio State fans over the last few
Not
days.
bad.
So, yeah, I can't defend Tim on the statement. You saw my reaction. I'm a very known Florida hater on the podcast and Florida State, Miami, and some of those Florida schools because of their perceived recruit. It's National Signing Day, right? This is Florida's like Super Bowl, the state of Florida. Like they always sign the best recruits and they're always falling short, right? And that is how I perceive it. I think what Tim was going on, besides just I'm going to take the most hyperbolic side of an argument, is that Ohio State benefited for years being in what the Big Ten, where we know until recently that the Big Ten was not as good as what we were seeing from SEC teams, right? And I think that's where he was coming from. Having said that, do I think he's right? No, but I think that that's probably where his angle was. Ohio State is an elite program, and I think Ryan Day has actually taken them to another level beyond arguably what even Urban Meyer did. I know Urban was undefeated against the team up north and that whole thing, and so like he's like in hallowed grounds. But I just look at what Ryan Day's doing with this team and the consistency and with the history that you just laid out perfectly. They are one of the greatest programs in college football for sure.
Okay. And again, as soon as you popped on the screen and I realized who I was talking to,
Yeah.
I don't want to put you in a position to speak for somebody else because
No,
obviously your words are your words. And I thought that was laughable. But
Mark,
it's pretty...
I will say I'm starting the podcast tomorrow, and I have already told Tim I'm going to ask him if he would like to apologize to Ohio State fans. That is how I'm going to start. We're recording our preview podcast, and that is the first thing I'm going to say to him.
I don't think me personally, he doesn't have to take advice from me. I don't think he has anything to apologize for. I have certainly made statements on here. Like I guesstimated the other day, I've done like 12,000 live streams. So obviously I've said stupid things that a little bit later said, okay, wait a minute. I wasn't really thinking that through. Or I was trying to make a point like your co-host was. I am having a really strange thing with StreamYard where I keep popping up the banner I just built for you. And then it like fades away. And I've never seen that before, but just want to make sure that people know where to find you.
Yeah.
And your podcast.
Yeah, I think for us, Tim is you're from Ohio, like what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like Tim is what we call from the region in Indiana, Hammond, Indiana.
Okay.
You know, what the Christmas Story was actually like based off of that city. He was just built in that region, that mindset. He's a Bears fan, right? The worst pro existence fandom probably there is, and they're having a great year this year, which probably will mean that they will end in heartbreak. So I think he just wanted to poke the bear a little bit, and Florida was a good one to drop when you're talking about poking the bear, because Florida is obviously nowhere near. I could debate you on which would be a better job, Ohio State or LSU. Like I potentially could have that discussion.
Sure.
But for history of the program, Ohio State's a better than both Florida and LSU.
Yeah. So let's get to the game on Saturday.
Yeah.
And my goodness, I have Ohio State ranked #1 in the country right now. Just to give you an idea how I do it, I don't go by who I think are the best teams in the country. I try to just simply do a resume ranking. But I had Indiana ranked #1 for much of the season. Certainly that win against Oregon's about as impressive as any game we've seen this year. So I will admit that Indiana surprised me this year. I thought this was going to be a nice 8-4, 9-3 football team. And certainly they outplayed that and showed that they have gone leaps and bounds even beyond what they showed us last year. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, Curt Cignetti has to be the ire of every coach who takes over a middling football program out there, because there's no more excuse, especially in the Big Ten where you get all this media money that you can do something with. What makes this guy so good?
Well, see, on my Twitter, I'll put out stuff a lot of times that like Kurt Cignetti has broken college football programs, like Kentucky firing Mark Stoops.
Yeah.
Like I will say that's like a Kurt Cignetti effect, right? And you'll hear like Matt Jones from Kentucky Sports Radio will come on and say and point to Indiana's success and Vanderbilt's success and say, well, why can't we do it here? A cool $39 million check to go get the Will Stein out of Oregon. Like that's to try to make a move to get some excitement around the fan base, because even traditional basketball programs, smaller programs, like we can look at Indiana, like we could do it. I think what Kurt Cignetti did that probably kind of resonates in, you know, even Tim's ridiculous comments or like what I'm saying on the podcast too, is just instill a confidence at IU. I actually worked at Indiana until November of last year, which is when we started the podcast once I was no longer employed by IU. And I came away from it of just like, he was the first guy to have this like level of confidence and self-belief that we didn't have to be just a basketball school and just mail in our, just take our football check and just fund basketball or academic buildings. We could actually be, he actually said we could be Ohio State. There's no reason why we can't be Ohio State. We're the southernmost school in the Big Ten, so we're near SEC country, and we are a state school that's the size, if not a little bit smaller, than Ohio State is. Now, Ohio State doesn't have a big-time program in the state of Ohio. Sorry, Cincinnati fans, competing against them. But Indiana could sit in that spot. And that's the type of things from day one. That's where the Google me came from, is just that confidence. And I think there's an article in The Athletic today about his whole career has been all about football and confidence. And you hear that from guys, but you watch his interviews, you watch his stuff, and I know it comes across as arrogant and cocky. And if he's not my coach, I'm probably not liking him. But the guys believe, the fans now believe, and I'm walking in Ohio State. Today, I'm not nervous. Saturday, I'll probably be nervous because that's just how I am.
Yeah, well, certainly when he made the famous statement at the basketball game that Purdue sucks. And
yes,
when I heard that, I was okay, sure. Yeah, that's your rival, the old Oak and Bucket. And then he comes in with Michigan and Ohio State. And I'm like, okay, come on, buddy. like tone it down. But you know what? I let it sink in for not long, and I came to the same conclusion you did. I thought they need this at Indiana. They need somebody who's going to go. Why come in and say we're going to do the best we can, and we think we can build something, and we'll try to get to a bowl game, and then still get your head kicked in by Ohio State anyway? Why not just go for it? The only thing I couldn't figure is, would he do this anywhere else, or is he just trying to wake them up and give them a boost of confidence?
Yeah, I think that's the thing that we were nervous about for 2 years, is like, were we the stepping stone to the bigger program? When Penn State opened up this year, it was in the back of my mind, like, is he he's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you saw his emotion after the game. Like, would he be able to do that? I just think one of the things, I mean, he's played at West Virginia, played for his dad. He is a lot about legacy and what he can do. And Indiana has shown this level of commitment that's never been shown before. Get the 2 years prior to this, Tom Allen was asked he tried to fire Nick Sheridan, Alabama's offense coordinator, and now his co-offense coordinator is Ryan Grubb, or whatever demotion he took, to fire Nick Sheridan at IU, who followed Kalen DeBoer. And he had to take it out of his salary. And they put that out in the official statement that Tom Allen was taking a pay cut to fire his own offense coordinator after a historically bad year. And now we're hiring a coach for $11 million, right? That was the level of commitment. We got a new president from Georgia. Thank you, Georgia. Go Dogs. And we got an athletic director who is a basketball guy, but he's a true Hoosier, and was like, we could do this. And it's just kind of all come together, and it's made him believe.
I don't dislike Cignetti. I find him captivating, because most of these coaches' sideline interviews at halftime, forget it. I'm moving on to I don't watch commercials. I'm watching football all day set. I'm watching 3 games, no commercials. But I'll stop for Cignetti's halftime coming off the field, because he's this strange combination of he's super confident.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's kind of a bully, not in a bad way, folks. Yep. Just a bully, but he's kind of quirky and awkward too. he's
Yeah.
and he's a comedian. He's all this stuff mixed together. It's hilarious.
It's incredible to me to see his honesty. Like I agree with you. Like, you know, you go get more chicken wings or get a beer or whatever at halftime. I stop and wait, and you can see the national networks will put him on, even if they're losing, even if they're not playing well. Like, they want the Curt Cignetti interview because it's not the standard, like, packaged interview. And sometimes he says stuff like, I was at Autzen for the Oregon game, and like there was the stuff that was like, some people like brownies, some people like cookies, right? Like that was the reaction that, like, he was basically saying, like, some people like it, some people don't. And that's his analogy that he comes up with. That's the type of thing that Curt Cignetti is very, like, just point blank, straight in your face, direct. Now, I see some of your comments about Cignetti talking trash and all that type of stuff. This year, he's been way more like, and he's talked about it in the NBC interview he did, like, he's been way more suppressed because he felt like last year he had to be like that because of the lack of self-belief and confidence. And I think this year, him and Ryan Day were having a love fest with each other in the pregame interview at the Big Ten. Just talking and being complimentary of the job each of them are doing. And they're both doing a hell of a job. And it's going to be great.
Yeah, so it should be a heck of a game. So help us with Indiana's strategy against Ohio State. Where do you think they could possibly, against a team that shows almost no weaknesses? It was a running game at one point, but now we got Bo Jackson, beating up Michigan, and it looks like they have, much like last season, taken a weakness and made it at least, maybe not a huge strength for that team, but at least a decent element there to the offense. So where do you think Indiana might have an advantage?
Well, first say I haven't made my prediction. I still have until tomorrow night when I got to make my prediction on the score and where I'm going to go. Because I'm up in the air. Ohio State's the best team in the country. I really do believe that. And yes, it's a lot. And sorry, Ohio State fans, they get mad at this. We clipped this too, and this went viral on the internet. Ohio State hasn't really played anyone. And they are being put in this position because they have one of the best talented rosters in the country, and they won the national championship. I'm not saying they don't deserve to be number one, but they don't like on paper who they've played, who's the best offense that they played. And I heard all week it's Texas. It's Texas on August 30th against Arch Manning is the best offense that you played. Like, Illinois and Luke Altmaier is the best offense that you played, and Indiana beat them by 53 points. So, like, I am sitting here going, is Ohio State for real? My first inclination is yes. So that's the thing. So where does Indiana come in? All I've heard all week, and I had a clip before the Michigan State game that was like, or Michigan game, where I was like, if Michigan can't get to Julian Saint, Indiana's not winning this game. And they did not. Julian Saint was clean in that pocket. Like, that defensive line got nowhere near that guy. But guess how many sacks Oregon had given up to Dante Moore before Indiana came into Autzen? 1. How many sacks in that game? 6. This Indiana defense and this front 7, and how Bryant Haynes, who I think is the most underrated defense coordinator in the country, how they can disrupt the game is different. And I don't think people are necessarily ready for it. And I think that is going to be the edge, is can we actually get into the backfield against Julian Saint? And can our receivers, I think how they call the game on Saturday will matter a lot. Igminosa and Matthews Jr., they hold and they grab. And like, Indiana picked on Igminosan last year in that game. That was a lot closer than the scoreline said.
Sure.
But I think that ultimately it's going to be Indiana's offense actually scoring more than 16, 17 points, whatever that ridiculous number Ohio State's defense is doing. That needs to be the edge in the game. Because I think Indiana's defense can hold Ohio State down. I really do.
So Trent, what if those are the advantages for Indiana? What gives you the biggest cause of concern?
Our secondary, which is this is why Ohio State's the worst matchup for us, which is why I always am constantly having pause when I'm going, Indiana's going to win this game. Our secondary has been known to give up big plays and have miscommunication in the safeties. So Lewis Moore is like leading the Big Ten, I think, in interceptions for safety or whatever, and Farrell on the backside. But their communication at times, like in the Illinois game, we gave a big play. We've given up big long passes to some other teams, explosive. The one touchdown that Oregon scored against our defense was they were playing hurry up. They caught the miscommunication, just absolutely wide open on that backside. Dante Moore found him. That's the type of, you can't do that against Jeremiah Moore or Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. You just can't do it like that. Just, they will score touchdowns all day long on you. So that's a weakness that's there. And then on the offensive side of the ball, there's a guy, no one's going to know it because he's the left guard. His name is Drew Evans, and he's been hurt and been out for the last 5 weeks. Well, guess what? Indiana's offensive line has not looked as good as they did against Oregon the last 5 weeks. He was supposedly healthy in the bucket game against Purdue. He didn't play at all, and we're hoping that he's healthy. And if he does, under Drew Evans with Curt Cignetti, has never lost a game because he didn't play in the Ohio State game the year prior and didn't play in that Notre Dame game because he got hurt. So I'm hoping he comes back. Not that left guard can change everything on offensive line. It's probably the least most important position in football, but I'm hoping that continuity comes back because we're going to need it.
One last thing, there's this thought process out there for either team. Actually, you could, but it would seem to fit Ohio State a little bit more just because they're used to winning. That, oh yeah, it's a big, 10 years ago, the Big Ten championship game was the Big Ten championship game, or even 5 years ago. But now it's kind of like this, oh, they're both in the playoff. Does it really matter? Rest people. This is kind of an extra game. We could talk in the off season about the way things should probably be reformatted that would make more sense for games like this to either go away or matter. But for some reason, even though Ohio State has not won this game since 2020, it feels more like, well, this is the ultimate for Indiana. Not that they don't have national championship aspirations, but Ohio State's kind of used to, even though these players aren't, but the institution, the program used to, like, okay, Big Ten championship game, kind of, we do that there would be a little bit more hair on fire mentality out of Indiana.
So, Mark, it's funny you bring this up because you're stealing my spin zone if we lose this game. I am going to be like, what? Indiana wasn't showing anything. They want to play the national title. They might see Ohio State in the national title game. So, like, this is my spin zone if they lose. But ultimately, I think Ohio State's probably less motivated. But I do think one thing about Ohio State right now, and I'm seeing it in their fan base, and they're very, very proud of this, is they aren't just trying to win another national title, go back-to-back. I think they're trying to be the first 16-0 team in college football and win a national title. And arguably, listen to some national podcasts as well. Like, if they do that, that is the best season in college football history. Tim, my co-host, cannot dog Ohio State's history anymore if they go 16-0 after winning the national title with a first-year quarterback and two new coordinators and all that stuff. Like, Ryan Day cements himself as the best coach, if not one of the best, if not the best coach in college football. I think that stuff does matter to Ryan Day. I mean, for the pile of poo that he got dumped on him for losing to Michigan 4 straight times, and like how he looked like he death after that game, staring at the flag planting in the middle of the field. I think that stuff weighs on him, and I think he wants to do it. And so I do think Ohio State will go for it, and I think Indiana will go for it. There's some depth issues talking about in your chat. Indiana's relatively healthy right now, and I don't think they really worry about what Kirby Smart say this week of, like, you can get hurt on a Tuesday practice. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, you can get hurt anytime. I think that's what it's going to be, is it's there. But there's no doubt Indiana is going to go for it. Indiana is going to try to win, because I think if they win this and then eventually lose in the playoff, they're going to actually look at this as a successful season, which I know Ohio State would not.
So, Trent, I appreciate you being here. Kirkwood and Dunn podcast is right here on YouTube, and you can tell your sidekick there that even though what he said I think is completely ridiculous, I'm sure he's a great guy and knows his football otherwise. Thanks so much for taking the invite.
Yeah, I'll get on to him for ducking you. That's the only thing I'll do. I'll say, are you sure you're ducking people for this comment? But hopefully people tune in tomorrow. So I appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, man. All right, let's keep it rolling. DeReal, just want to let you know, anybody else calling in, we've got Kevin McGuffey lined up as our guest. So we want to get to Kevin here ASAP. And so, Kevin, how you doing tonight? Good to see you.
I'm doing good, Mark. Thanks for having me on. It's always great to be on talking with you, especially now because there's some excitement with the Kentucky football program. Dare I say, maybe even more so than the basketball program right now.
No doubt. Well, I know nothing about that.
Struggling.
I know nothing about that, but everyone, Kevin McGuffey, last word on college football. We lean on Kevin for everything Big Blue on the football side, at least. And let's start with the coaching hire. So, wow, that just seemed to happen so quickly. Mark Stoops is gone. Will Stein's the new head coach at Kentucky. It just like whiplashed me, for one thing, from a timing standpoint. So that all happened so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, as I wrote in my piece where I talked about the new coach, it's been a crazy whirlwind 72 hours here in Lexington. You go back to Saturday, Kentucky just gets absolutely dominated by Louisville in the battle for the Governor's Cup, 41-0. They do nothing. Those last two games are so disappointing, with Kentucky having a bowl game to possibly play for. Most people thought, myself included, that we were going to get to run it back one more year. Mark Stoops year 14, because Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director, didn't seem to be, he kind of wanted him to, get, for lack of a better term, work his way out of these issues. But then all of a sudden, late like Sunday, the word started coming out that, hey, this might actually happen. Stoops is going to be fired. And the two names that came up almost instantaneously was Will Stein and Brian Hartline. So at Ohio State, who of course now I think took the job at South Florida. So, and I think Stein was the number one pick, or the number one choice. And yeah, it just, it was 14. I was reading online, it was 14 hours and 35 minutes from the time that the school announced that Stoops had been fired to the time they announced that Will Stein had been hired, which is just, crazy. But I have to believe that at some point, someone had talked to Stein, or had reached out and said, hey, has something happened with Stoops? Would you be interested in coming here? Because that's the only way I can see this happening that fast. But for all intents and purposes, they introduced him officially today. Did really well, as you would expect, with this press conference. Excited to be here. He played here, went to school at Louisville, but, has his family. He talked about his family had season tickets in section 128, row 13 in the old Commonwealth Stadium. His dad played under Jerry Claiborne, was a 2-year letter winner. So he has, you and I have talked for a long time about the Big Blue Nation wanting an upgrade as far as the offense goes. And obviously Will Stein checks pretty much every box that you could hope for. You see what he's done at Oregon and what he did at Texas San Antonio before that. And everyone seems to think it's a home run hire. Now we'll see what happens when we get to August. But for right now, the excitement around this program is off the charts. Like I haven't seen it since probably 2022, maybe.
Yeah, if you can't hire a coach who has a proven track record as a head coach, it seems that the next best option, at least to create excitement, is to hire one of the hotshot offensive coordinators, especially because fans like offense. They want to know, okay, we're going to have an exciting football team. We're going to have an exciting offense, a guy that obviously is shown to be one of the best on that side of the ball in the nation. And I don't think any Kentucky fans who might be critical of, we should go get an experienced head coach, should look across the nation and see there are tons of coordinators who became head coaches as their first job at a big school. Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning. We could go on and on. Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, obviously rising up through the ranks there, but Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. So it's not uncommon to grab a successful head coach from the coordinator ranks.
Absolutely. And as I said, and Mark Stoops, for example, he had never been a head coach before. He was the defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach at Florida State when he came in 2013 when he replaced Joker Phillips. And just for you were talking about the established coaches, the third name that was tossed about that we heard around here was Dan Mullen at UNLV. So if Hartline, like I said, Stein was one, I think Hartline was probably 1A. Well, let's be honest, John Summerall was probably the overall at first the guy that everyone wanted, because obviously former player, former coach here, but he's going to be at Florida. But Dan Mullen was probably third on the list. So if those two had fallen through, that might have ended up being your guy. But like I said, I think it's for all the grief that Mitch Barnhart gets as athletic director, and some of it is warranted, maybe some of it's not. Getting this done and getting this done this quickly, and is a great tip of the cap to him. And also, me personally, I like the fact that Stein is going to keep coaching at Oregon through the college football playoff. Because quite frankly, if Oregon is doing well, you're going to hear, hey, Will Stein, offensive coordinator, he's going to be the new coach at Kentucky come the fall. So it can be kind of a recruiting tool for the Cats. But just for me personally, I like the fact that he's going to stay and coach with Oregon until their season's done.
One last thing on Mark Stoops, and we have had tons of conversations about Mark Stoops through the years, so I guess this will be the last one, unless we want to harken back, and I'm sure we will at some point. But I'm trying to figure out whether the Mark Stoops of the 10-3, 9-4 years is that more what Kentucky football can be, or did he wave a magic wand for 4 or 5 years that created that? And now we're just looking, what we've seen the last 3 or 4 years, and specifically the last 2, is really Kentucky football, and it's tough to get out of that. Mm-hmm. Or is Will Stein going to be able to recreate and maybe even go beyond what Mark Stoops did? So he obviously did an outstanding job for most of his tenure there, but can you put your finger on why things went sour and what he stopped being able to accomplish?
NIL.
Okay.
I think that is the biggest thing. I mentioned Barnhart earlier. Kentucky has been very slow on embracing the NIL because Mitch wanted to do it, which there's nothing wrong with that, doing it the right way, making sure you're not, circumventing NCAA rules. But if you go back to that starting in 2017 through about 2022, the other thing that happened, they got some really good players under the radar and that guys didn't really know about, and they turned out to be huge players. Josh Allen, he was famously a 2-star. Yeah, I'd like to see him in the playoffs next year too. Famously a 2-star player who became one of the best, if not the best, defensive lineman in UK history, and now he's tearing it up with the Jaguars. I think that it not necessarily a magic wand. I think they found the right guys. The system worked, and then for about that 5 years, they were Kentucky football was about as good as we've seen it probably since there was a couple years under Fran Kersey in the 70s, but you have to go back probably to the Bear Bryant days for Kentucky football to be that good. But then I think the NIL, there was Stoops had the famous dust up with John Calipari, then basketball coach with his football or basketball school. He was complaining a lot. I don't use the word complaining, but constantly talking about NIL. He says, man, I just want to coach. I don't want to have to deal with all this other crap. I think that was, but I think as the NIL thing happened, and then Kentucky, and let's be honest, Kentucky took some chances on some people, especially at quarterback, and it didn't pan out. Devin Leary, he had a pretty good season, but was not what everyone was expecting. And then Brock Vandegrift last year did not pan out. And then even this year, Zach Calzada, he played about 2 games, and then got hurt. And then, my opinion, I think Cutter Boley should have been the starter from day one this year. Now going forward, we'll see. Boley said after the season that he'll be here in 2026, but that was before Stoops was let go. So we'll see what happens there. They brought in a really good quarterback today, Matt Ponatowski from Cincinnati Moeller. Really good, really good player. He was at the Will Stein press conference today. He was going to sign originally in February, but then when the Stein announcement happened, he said, "Hey, I'm signing on Wednesday." But getting back to your original question, I think it's a combination of NIL and just some of the other things that come along with being a coach that just didn't he plateaued. He was great, and be forever grateful for everything Stoops did for this program. All time leading most wins of all time, the most bowl games with 8 straight bowl games, won 4 straight. But yeah, I think it was just time at the end. And to Stoops' credit, he had the buyout in his contract that said if he got fired, got all $38 million within 60 days. But he went in with the university, and they renegotiated. So it's going to be spread out over a few years now. So I have not heard the terms of Stein's contract. Reportedly, it's 5 years, but I haven't heard, as we're talking, I haven't heard about anything about numbers. And agree with your viewer. Yeah, Kentucky, the chrome helmets are really sharp, especially when they wear them with the black uniforms. So.
And to think, I should have. They're all the way on the top. I don't know if you can see them up there.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Got the Kentucky blue front and center where they belong. So, where was I going with this? Of course, the lifeblood of the program is always recruiting, but not quite as much as it used to be with the transfer portal, which I'm sure is going to be buzzing in Lexington.
Absolutely.
But I noticed this class, you brought up the quarterback who came in 67th is not the best, but that's only 14 signees. So
right.
Do you have any thoughts about the current class?
Like I said, this year, this recruiting, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this with some of your other guests. It's just, to me, just the weirdest thing that signing day is today in the middle of like all the conference championship games. I don't know why that got changed or when it, but it's just the dumbest thing ever. I know a couple of coaches have already talked about it this week. Kentucky, before Stoops was let go, they had made a big push that they were going to try, obviously, bring in recruits, but they were going to try to hit the junior college ranks really hard. And so I think they had a couple of decommitments from what they had before, but I think a lot of the players that they had, as I'm looking at like the 247, it's saying 11 players signed, and then there's three that have committed but haven't signed yet, and then one of those is Messiah Tilson, who's a safety from Illinois, who's the highest rated player in this class. He was on what they like to call a flip watch. I think it was Rutgers, who was hot on his heels. But yeah, I think what's going to happen is, like with the transfer portal, I don't know if some of these guys from Oregon, maybe. I know one of the quarterbacks that his name has come up as a possible transfer to Kentucky. Let me find his name. Austin Novosad, who played in 1 year, played in one game this year for Oregon. That's a name that's come up as a possible transfer. and we'll see what happens. Like I said, I expect them. It's a different staff now. We don't know what a Will Stein recruiting class is going to look like, because this is all, this is all new territory for everyone. But yeah, like I said, the quarterback Ponatowski, I think he could be really good. Because right now you have Bowley, but other than Bowley, you have two freshmen, Stone Saunders and Brendan Ward, who Ward played in a couple games this year, and Saunders didn't play at all. But Saunders was the Pennsylvania High School Player of the Year the season before coming in. So we'll see what happens with that. But like I said, we don't know what the Stein class is going to look like. They may go after the transfer portal a lot harder than what Stoops and his staff excuse me, was planning on. And of course, he still got to fill out his staff. The rumor is that Justin Burke, who's at Texas San Antonio and also played at Louisville when Stein was there, is going to be the new offensive coordinator. There was a rumor that they were trying to get Charlie Strong to be come in as defensive coordinator. We'll see, because Brad White left and he joined John Summerall's staff at Florida. So like I said, I don't know that either one of those. I know Burke has been heavily rumored. I don't know if that's official or not, but like I said, we'll just see. We'll see what happens. Once Oregon season, excuse me, is over, we'll get a better idea of what kind of recruiting we're going to get out of Stein once he gets his staff in there.
Kevin McGuffey, last word on college football. All right, Kevin, let's get to your specialty before we let you go. So
Okay.
Everyone, we're going to drop the link in the chat to Last Word on College Football, and I will find Kevin's bowl projection. So I don't want to give too much away here, Kevin, because I want people to obviously get directed to your article. But Kevin's as good as anybody at making bowl projections. And I know we've come to a place in college football with the playoff that everybody's so hyper focused on the playoff,
Right.
that the bowl games get kicked to the side. But I still just love bowl season.
Oh, yeah.
Give me any bowl game in December, late December, and that's my entertainment throughout the holiday season. I love bowl games.
Yeah, yes, sir. Absolutely. I'm the same way. I will if I can, I will watch every doesn't matter, the Myrtle Beach Bowl, the 68 Ventures Bowl, the whatever. If there's a game, we'll pop it up. I will watch it. Of course, one thing that we do that we kind of pride ourselves on at Last Word, are all our writers. We have about 20 some writers, I think now. We all take a couple bowl games and we do previews and recaps of every game. So everyone. So if there's a bowl game you're interested in, you can come to Last Word on College Football and you'll be able to find a preview of that game, and then a recap after that game after it's done. So, but yeah, hey, that looks familiar.
So can you give us any highlights or teases? Because I'm guessing there's always about 3 or 4 new ones or changed names every year. And I used to be as up on bowl games as anybody imaginable and knew all the bowl tie-ins to the conferences. And I've kind of lost track of some of that. But are there any new bowl games that we need to look out for?
Well, the one thing the Bahamas Bowl was not being played this year again for the second time. The second time in 3 years. I don't remember. It's at the very bottom. And we're just calling it the To Be Announced Bowl right now. And I've got Delaware, because we ended up with 80 bowl eligible teams for 82 slots. So if you look up in the bowl bylaws somewhere, that even though Delaware and Missouri State are still transitioning from FCS to FBS because they won more than 6 games and there's not enough other bowl eligible teams, they both get to go bowling this year. So, and then you still have a lot of the teams. This is the last year for this. The bowls, like you have the Holiday Bowl called up there. A lot of the old Pac-12 schools still go to the Pac-12 games as a legacy. Like I said, that one I have Pittsburgh playing Utah in that one, and then I think I have Washington in the LA Bowl. there's about 3 or 4 in there. Like USC. I think I have USC in the Alamo Bowl. So, but of course, that will go away next year with the new look. With the new look Pac-12. So, but yeah, so we've got the newest one was we just talked about it. It's the Boca Raton Bowl, which is now it's on December 23rd, and it's sponsored by Bush's Baked Beans. So now it's called Bush's Boca Raton Bowl of Beans. That's the official title. So as I said, I make a comment in there. So we have no idea, like, is the winning coach going to get a big giant thing of baked beans dumped on him after the game? But actually, I have James Madison playing in that game. But the one thing, obviously, to watch this weekend is going to be the ACC title game. The quote, the doomsday scenario that people are calling it, that if Virginia beats Duke, then everything's fine. Virginia will get that 11 seed, and the ACC will have a representative. However, if Duke wins, then who knows what's going to happen? Do you take James Madison, who's most likely going to be 12-1? Do you take BYU if BYU loses a close game to Texas Tech, or if they beat Texas Tech? Do you take BYU and Texas Tech, who I've been really high on all year? I think I have them as my 4 seed. Not to give too much away, but basically it's Ohio State. Got Ohio State, Georgia, Indiana, and Texas A&M as my top 4. And but yeah, that's the biggest one, is the Bush's Baked Beans game. So and then the New Orleans Bowl doesn't have a sponsor anymore. It used to be, it was sponsored by R&L Carriers for like 20 some years. It's that they don't have that sponsorship anymore. So now it's just, for this year, it's just the New Orleans Bowl. And then of course the Snoop Dogg Bowl. I mean, who wouldn't want to go play in the Snoop Dogg Bowl in Arizona, right?
Yeah. So the one that catches my eye, well, a ton of them, but right there at the top, you got the Game Above Sports Bowl, which I've never heard before, but it's played between a MAC school and the Big Ten school the day after Christmas. So that has to be the game in Detroit, right?
Yes.
That has been the Quick Lane Bowl, the Cherry Bowl.
It's been 1,000 different.
The Motor City Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Right. Like I said, I had. So I got Penn State in that one. Basically, the week before I said Penn State was playing Rutgers, 2 5-6 teams. Whoever wins gets to go to Detroit. And so since Penn State won, they're my pick for that one. And see, they used to be automatically the winner of the MAC, which I'm projecting is, I think, Western Michigan to win. But I don't think a lot of these teams now don't have these games. They have tie-ins, but it's not like, okay, the Big Ten champ, the Sun Belt champion goes here, or the Conference USA champion goes here, kind of thing. And then the other thing to note is that there's four SEC games with tie-ins that don't have that won't have SEC teams in them, because of right now we've got 4 teams in the playoff, and you could make yes, I think that's what I have. I think that'd be a heck of a game too, Tennessee and SMU, that you don't have SEC teams for. So you kind of have to get creative. So I don't have an SEC team at the Birmingham Bowl, Gasparilla, Liberty Bowl, or the Mayo Bowl. So we had to get a little creative. I have the loser. I've got a Big 12 team playing basically the loser. Whoever loses between Tulane and North Texas, I've got them going to the Liberty Bowl. So, and we'll see. We'll see if that, we'll see what happens. So I think that should be a heck of a game on Friday night too. So, with Tulane and North Texas. So, but yeah, like I said, please check it. Please check us out. Last word on college football. Like I said, I've been very busy this week. It's been a crazy week with Kentucky, with the Stoops firing, Will Stein's hiring, and then just a little bit about signing day. So then, and then with the bowl projections, and then we'll have another one probably either late Saturday night or early Sunday morning once all the conference championship games are over. We keep thinking that sometime during the course of this week we'll hear. This is usually the time where you start hearing of teams accepting bids to some of the earlier bowl games. Now, whether that happens or not, we'll see. But yeah, please check them out. Let everybody, love to hear the comments, good or bad. Like I said, it's okay. It's like, it's if somebody says, hey, that stunk, I don't know what the crap you were thinking. That's fine. That's part of the joy, the fun of it. Because like it's just, trying to put the teams and projecting and who you think is going to go where, and it changes. It changes from week to week. So like I said, I think it's going to be a really exciting weekend. And who knows if Vanderbilt and because as a Kentucky fan right now, seeing Vanderbilt and Indiana going on these runs that they are right now. They used to use the phrase in Kentucky, why not Kentucky? It's like, well, why not? So maybe Will Stein will be the guy in a year or two. Who knows? Maybe we'll be sitting here talking about Kentucky, maybe playing for a playoff berth. But I would like to say real quick, if they had the 12-team playoff in 2018 and 2021, I'm pretty sure Kentucky would have been in both of those years because I think they were ranked. I think especially 2018, I think they were ranked high enough that they would have been. I think they would have been in the playoff if there was a 12-team playoff back then. So anyway, just a little fun stat to throw out there.
Yeah, I think I have come around on that one in going through, the 12-team playoff in the past that, Kentucky would have made it that particular year, which was the year they beat Penn State in the Citrus Bowl, right?
Right. Yep. Sure was.
All right. Kevin, when you say, a comment section full of, that's BS and you stink and all that, I thought you were talking about my comment section. For a second
No.
So,
of course not. No one ever says anything bad.
No. Well, Kevin, we appreciate you being here. And again, it's Kevin McGuffey, of course, last word on college football. And we've dropped the link there in the chat that you can grab the bowl projections.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, Kevin, if we don't get a chance to see you beforehand, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you very much. And same to you and you and yours. So I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and always great talking to you, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks, Kevin. We'll see you.
Thank you. See you later.
All right. Now we get to the much patient, the real MVP stopping by.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I am doing just fine. At least you get to hear some Kentucky football talk.
Oh, yeah. Hey, man, listen, we're going all the way next year. We're going all the way. And I don't know where we're going, but we're going somewhere.
Okay.
Now, sure, it does. I mean, it might gonna matter that we play Bama, LSU, Vandy, Missouri, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Texas A&M. But who cares, Mark? Because we got a new coach, offensive minded. We're gonna have fun at least next year.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna be slinging the rock around. We're not gonna be losing like 18-7 anymore. We're gonna lose like 35-48 or something like that. It'll be different. It'll be fun. And we'll absolutely have our souls and hopes, dreams, and crushed immediately because we're going to be 3-9 and people are going to say we're terrible and we're awful and we're going to eliminate some team in the playoff, but they're going to have like 3 or 4 super highly ranked wins. But that doesn't matter because their record is 1 game less than this other team who's played absolutely nobody. And it's going to be glorious, Mark.
All right. Well, that does sound glorious. Or you may have your hands on the next Kurt Signetti, maybe.
Maybe. I think the likelihood of that is close to 0%. It's considering he's 1 of 1. I would say that's close to 0%. Listen, everybody's hyping him up, so I'm going to believe in them. Hey, we're going all the way, Mark. I don't know where we're going, but we're going all the way. And I'm going to say that until somebody proves me wrong because everybody's talking about how great of an offensive mind he is. I've watched absolutely almost 0 Oregon football because why would I? I mean, they're Oregon. They almost have nothing to do with us. But, Mark, I finally found the answer to my favorite question. Who's my favorite Louisville Cardinal? That answer has been solved for every Kentucky fan from here to the end of time. You know his dad played for Kentucky, by the way? It's kind of interesting dynamic how that.
Well, I don't know if that's been answered for you until the end of time. Let's see how he does. Now, he may stay as a hated Louisville Cardinal if he doesn't succeed.
Absolutely. Well, hey, maybe. Probably. But I mean, what's the bar? The bar is just be better than Joker Phillips, okay? That's the bar for Kentucky. Just be better than Joker Phillips. And then, because we've already experienced the worst, because he was the worst. Listen, you're in the playoffs, man. Be happy, be celebrated. The committee did you all a solid, bumped you up to 9. There's absolutely no chance even if you lose by 70, you're going to be eliminated from the college football playoff. So, congrats. You'll be a 10 seed and you'll make probably the championship game because your path is going to be cake until the quarterfinal or the semifinals when you have to play Indiana. So, have a good time, man. I mean, Mark, let me ask you about this. Very simple question that has a lot of complexities. What in the world's going on with Penn State?
Penn State has taken the biggest plummet in college football over the last 2 months. And you would think that the brand and that they do have an interim coach in play and Terry Smith that's been around forever and would have built relationships along with Franklin in recruiting could have held together a class that would have been better than what we're looking at right now. This is insane. Let me go look it up while we talk here, because I think I saw you drop in the chat 120th.
No, they're worse than that. They're worse than that.
Okay.
Think about it. There's only 136 FBS teams. They're below that ranking, which seems like a mathematical impossibility, but somehow they do it. Last I saw, they were just slightly ahead of Prairie View A&M, which honestly sounds like a school that Alabama or Texas is going to replace with, Ohio State or Michigan coming up, because, Texas doesn't belong in the playoffs because they lost to Florida. But if they would have replaced Ohio State with Prairie View A&M, Mark, the head-to-head would have kicked in for everybody, because the head-to-head kicks in for every single team in the country, unless your name is Notre Dame. So Texas would have been ranked ahead of Oklahoma. Then Oklahoma would have been ranked ahead of Alabama. We would have had 6 SEC teams make the playoff. But since Texas foolishly decided to schedule Ohio State because the committee said they were going to value strength of quality losses and based on how well the teams are, we're only having 5 instead of 6 this year, which is unfortunate. I heard that on 24/7 live stream, that when they have a 24-hour stream for recruiting, and they were going to interview players and stuff, and they had the one player that was committed to Penn State's class, and they introduced him. It's like, well, here's the one player that's been committed to Penn State. I mean, it was the saddest, most pathetic thing ever. They only had 1 recruit, but they've doubled it to 2 now, Mark. I don't know where you're on the list, and we can't see the list.
Okay, I'm scanning for Penn State. That's why I haven't brought it up yet. Nebraska is at 113. Oh,
they're
Penn
like
State.
Triple where Penn State is in the rankings.
Okay.
I think Penn State's 41.
Okay, yeah, Penn State's at 150. So, yes, this is quite sad, but it's quite hilarious at the same time. I don't really. I have no thought on this. I just.
Did you even know West Georgia was a school? I didn't know that until yesterday.
They have 2 commits. They're both 4 stars. Okay, somebody's going to come in here. Now, I don't know what players are going to be left to take, but they have to fill out a recruiting class. Unless they just hit the transfer portal and just fill it up that way. I guess that's the option now.
Did you ever think you would see this, by the way? A legit P4 school is ranked behind. I mean, you think this would be like mathematically impossible.
You would think so.
For any school in the Power 4, even just like your Purdue or Florida State, that's just atrocious, that goes like 1-11, 2-10. You think, well, at least there's some intangible advantages that a 2-star or 3-star, a few of them would want to come in and they would be better than McNeese and West Georgia.
That is something else. Yeah, I don't, again, this is not nearly as alarming as it would have been pre-transfer portal, because whoever this coach is, and I don't know who it's going to be at this point.
Yeah, Jeff Braun turned him down today.
Okay. I was about to say they're down to Jeff Brom, but he could have been one of these the second or third choice. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to have to delve into the NFL ranks. That might be the place to go. But yeah, see, I don't see this. It's funny, it's strange, it's amusing to look at from this standpoint, but I don't think it's quite as tragic, depending on who their coaching hire is, because they can fill this team up in this roster through the transfer portal.
I understand that, but how they can only get so many good players, even through the transfer portal. Like, this is going to set them back a year or two at a minimum, correct?
Yes, it's going to set them back because they can't sign the three best offensive linemen in the transfer portal and the two of the five best wide receivers, et cetera, et cetera. They're not going to spend that kind of money. Plus, they just can't outcompete the other 25 best programs in the country for the best transfer player. So yeah, when I state that, that's not a cure-all, and that's not me just snapping my fingers saying this is going to be easy, but there is a transfer portal. What seems to me more alarming than that, because they have their current head coach in place, is that Nebraska is 113, and this is National Signing Day.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, they've been fighting and clawing, but they just barely squeaked by Hawaii, Kennesaw State, and Delaware, Mark. I mean,
this is, again, Penn State has an excuse. Now it's a poorly crafted excuse because they set themselves up by firing their coach before just about anybody else fired their coach, but then they didn't land the coaches that they thought, and probably just overestimated their own value. Maybe wasting their time with Urban Meyer and Mike Elko. If the report that I saw, and I forget where that came from, I don't know, I posted it during this show a couple days ago, that somebody had reported that they had a pretty good line of who they had approached, and it started with Urban Meyer, then it went to Mike Elko, and then it went to like Kurt Signetti, and on down the line. There were like 15 coaches on the list, and now that's got to be at 17 and 18, Jeff Brown being the latest. Yeah, I think that they are most likely going to have an NFL assistant be their head coach next year.
I mean, that they have to do that, or they can promote Trey Smith, I think his name is, the current guy. Yeah. But I mean, he's not. That's to me like what UCLA did, where they just promoted a guy who nobody knows, who's probably unqualified to do the job, and has nobody believes in. Nebraska, to me, I agree with you, is pretty alarming as well at 113. Honest question, Mark. What is Nebraska trying to do with Matt Rule? Like, what is his game plan, his goal? Because his only thing that he's done of any note since he's been there is he got Dylan Raiola, or Patrick Mahomes wannabe, and he looks like Patrick Mahomes and he acts like Patrick Mahomes, but he ain't Patrick Mahomes. And other than that, they've done literally nothing.
Yeah, this is kind of the first time since Matt Rule took over that his program is kind of at a crossroads, because the team was just that bad down the stretch, was really that bad overall against the easiest schedule in the conference. And now he runs into this as a recruiting class. Matt Rule has talked a great game, and the team, to a certain extent, now, hey, any competent head coach was going to be able to tighten a few things up to make their team look better than what we saw under Scott Frost, because they were just so incredibly bad. But he really has only eliminated a small percentage of the gaffes, the mistakes, the technical mistakes. It's just not a good football team. And now we're looking at 4 years. We're going into year 4. So I'm starting to question, or I've gotten past the starting to question Matt Rule. I'm on full bore. don't think it's ever going to happen for Matt Rule at Nebraska. That's where I'm at now.
Okay, and at what point in the season do you like? To me, this is already at the point where they're just drawing dead for next season because Nebraska isn't a place where people are going to transfer in because it's Nebraska. So, like, they're not going to be good enough, and they're going to go 7-5, 6-6, or 8-4. Like, we all know what they're doing, and they're not really changing on anything. So, if you're going to pull the plug eventually, why give him another season if we all know how it's going to end?
Oh, no, I think that they've got to stay with Matt Rule. I think there have been too many coaching changes and too much upheaval all over the sport, and too many guys have switched jobs for them to have a viable candidate lined up. Plus, we're this deep in the process. They've already signed a recruiting class or a partial recruiting class based on those numbers that have committed to this coach and believe that Matt Rule is going to be the coach next year. I think you're right. He did accomplish enough at Temple and at Baylor, of course, and they are better. Although, again, you just made the Joker Phillips comparison to Mark Stoops and to Kentucky football overall. I'll do the same with Scott Frost. So almost anybody with a pulse would have made them better, but they are better than they were, in better shape 3 to 4 years ago, but not nearly to what was promised or what was expected. So he should be the coach this next year. But this is, to me, this would be the year for them to be a Big Ten. Well, forget the Big Ten, a college football playoff. Not necessarily a team that reaches the playoff, but is in serious contention for the playoff late in the season, or he's done. Well, there we see, just not to cut you off, but UCLA also at number 95. But again, you're talking the excuse there, and it's valid to a certain extent, is coaching transition. The Nebraska thing is what, to me, again, is really alarming.
Right. I'm just looking at their schedule next year, that being Nebraska. They play at Iowa, at Oregon, and they play Indiana and Ohio State next year. So the odds of them making the college football playoff is almost like none.
Yes.
They're not making the college football playoff. Their ceiling is 8-4. They'll go 6-6 because they'll lose to they'll lose to Michigan State because that's what Nebraska does. And they lose to a team or two every year. They shouldn't. Quote on paper, they shouldn't too. But people in the offseason will buy the hype that they'll win every 50-50 game. All they need to do is pull off an upset, and maybe with their difficult schedule, the committee. I just don't understand the people that always sell Nebraska as a dark horse. It reminds me a lot of Virginia Tech and how people always think of them as like this dark horse program, and they just come out and do absolutely nothing. Now, that's probably going to change since they got gifted James Franklin because Penn State decided to self-implode, but I just don't understand what Nebraska's doing at all going forward. I don't understand why people even – I know they once were a proud program in the 90s or something. That is completely faded for anybody that's like under 30 at this point. They're just a dead program, Mark, in terms of national relevancy. They have as much national – they have proven – less in this century or this millennium even than Indiana. That's where they're at. Indiana this century has done more than Nebraska. And there's plenty of programs like that.
Okay. I would be splitting hairs to debate that, but I would debate that, and they have done more than Indiana. But your point's well taken. I get your point. Like, they've won conference championships and won more games and all that business. But so I get your point. I get what you're talking about there. I forget where I was headed. Oh, Penn State. Yeah, you gotta wonder what's going through James Franklin's mind, which I know he's busy putting together a coaching staff and a recruiting class and all that, but he's got to be gaining a semblance of satisfaction about Penn State fans are going to be clamoring for James Franklin, this time next year, unless things just dramatically change.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably going, what, 7-5 at absolute best, 8-4. I mean,
Yes.
they've completely hamstrung themselves in a position that I didn't even think was possible. Like, I thought it was fine to fire them because I thought they had a plan.
Yeah.
But it's pretty evident that they didn't have a plan, which is the absolute worst thing to do, is have absolutely no plan at all. Like, is this to the point where even the athletic director needs to be on the hot seat? Because he's probably costed his football team 2 or 3 years.
Well, it's all we have to do is look at the team we just talked about, Kentucky. They obviously had a plan in place. So when they fired their head coach, boom, they get one of the bright young minds, one of the up and comers in the game. Hopefully for you, he's the next Kenny Dillingham type. That's who I liken him to, because obviously he replaced him as offensive coordinator at Oregon. Kentucky had they had a coach, now horrendous seasons, albeit the last 2 years, but still a competent, well-respected coach, that if they didn't have it lined up, they could have stuck around with Mark Stoops for another year. But they had a plan in place. They executed. They had the guy ready. Boom. They made it happen in like 12 hours. Penn State's been sitting on this since like week 5.
Yeah, it's insane.
And obviously they've taken their shot. If the reports are accurate of the guys that they've gone after, it's just been a combination, I got to say, that they have overvalued themselves, plus combination of just bad timing, bad luck, because certainly it is a great job. And we know what Penn State is. So it's not like they've reached past what you would expect when they've gone after the coaches that they've gone after. It's not like those are unreachable guys for Penn State, but for whatever reason, each guy is good where he is. Pretty much that's the explanation. Now, once we get down to Jeff Brom, I don't know what the explanation is there, besides that he just likes it at Louisville, and that's obviously his alma mater.
Right. Absolutely. Mark, I wanted to ask you, in terms of, it feels weird this week of college football because we do have conference championship games happening this week, but it feels, just based off the vibe, more people care about the Miami Notre Dame discussion for the college football playoff, and 2 teams that don't play, than every single conference championship combined. And I think the reason for that is two of the conference championship games are rematches, that being the Big 12 and SEC. One of them literally doesn't matter at all, which is the Big 10. Both teams win, lose, draw is going to have the byes. And then the ACC is Virginia Duke. And nobody cares about either of those teams. So I know it's you're a purist and you like conference championships and all that stuff. But with how big these you want to jump in?
Well, the disclaimer there is you are right, but I like them when there's a format in place, as there has been in the past, that makes them count for something. I don't like it the way it is now, because I'm going to watch Ohio State and Indiana play. And if Ohio State wins a Big Ten championship, as an Ohio State fan, I get to go to the record book and go, okay, click one more Big Ten championship. So when I'm arguing with Michigan fan next May, I can just go to, okay, more Big Ten championships since this day. That's all it's going to serve me as an Ohio State fan and as a person that does what I do here. But other than that, no, we've defeated the championship incentive and all of that. So yes, you're right. Circa 2005, 1995, even 5 years ago, conference championships, I love them, but they've become null and void in 2 conferences, basically.
My suggestion is, I know it's not going to happen, but I think ideally they should just go away and we should have a additional week on the schedule. And that way teams who haven't played yet play the highest ranked team that's available or that's closest to them. That's what I would do. So if Alabama's the 1 seed, they've already played Georgia the 2 seed. So you go down to the 3 line, which is Ole Miss. Alabama hasn't played Ole Miss. That'd be a game. Georgia hasn't played Texas A&M. That'd be a game. And you just do that. That way you get an extra data point of games. And you expand the season by a week. And then after that week, the SEC declares this is their conference champion. That's the ultimate world where I would like to live. And it's similar to Matt Zimmick's flex week. I know it's never going to happen, but it's a pipe dream. And now the more realistic.
Not just to cut you off, because you may have something there, because the reason not to have conference, or the reason to have conference championship games during this situation in which they become largely null and void, is obviously money. The ratings are still great. They make a ton of money. Well, you're replacing it with more games that should overall make more money. I don't necessarily know that that's it needs to be vetted out a little bit more, but that's not a bad idea, because for some old people like myself, we remember when there were not conference championship games and the regular season ended. We saw Alabama, Auburn, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, UCLA, etc. And boom, your conference champions, they were 7-1 and everybody else was 6-2 or whatever. And there's your, or you had co-conference champions. That's just the way it is. You had 2 teams that were 7-1. And you can go look up the record books for any conference, and you had co-champions all over the place, and nobody cared that much. And I love the extra data point. I love the taking the teams that are on the bubble the last week of the season, based on what you're proposing, to say, wow, we get to see so-and-so versus so-and-so, Alabama against Ole Miss, and see really who deserves it. Not that that would necessarily knock Ole Miss out of it, but yeah, I think that's an idea to be pursued right there.
Yeah, and the incentive for what I was thinking about it to be the higher ranked team is that game's the home team. So Alabama would be the home team since they're the 1 seed in the SEC.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Georgia 2, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
I think it would eliminate a lot of the bubble discussion in general. It'll also punish Notre Dame because they're not in a conference, so they don't get to play a game. And that's their fault. And I want to force them to join a conference as much as humanly possible. And under the current format, it looks like you can lose a game against Notre Dame directly in week 1, but since it was in week 1, it really doesn't count. Which all it's going to incentivize to do is, first off, why schedule early non-conference games? Because they literally don't count. Because you can literally beat them and be ranked behind them. So you might as well schedule anybody in the country. And 2, Notre Dame can play a bunch of teams that are just horrendous and scrubs and inflate their record and beat absolutely nobody with a pulse other than USC and be ranked just because they're quote unquote perceived better than Miami. I don't know what that means, that the committee just thinks they're better than Miami. I don't know what eye test they've done. I don't know how they lost 3 out of the 4 common opponents, because one team is blown out by 31 versus 24 or something like that. How it's perceived better. But apparently we might as well just going forward. I think next year Texas plays Ohio State, Mark. Like, I would almost guarantee you that game's not happening, which is sad. But unfortunately, we're living in the world where you can go 9-3 and you can lose to the number 1 team and not be in the college football playoff. And I know people are going to say the Florida game, but Mark, Texas was 10-2. Would they be ranked ahead of Oklahoma?
Yes, sure.
And would Oklahoma be in the college football playoffs?
Yes.
Therefore, Texas would have to be.
Yes.
So therefore, why are we playing again? What's the incentive to play these big non-conference games?
I saw a clip today of Urban Meyer on Colin Cowherd's show, and he said the same thing. He said, if I was Ryan Day, I'd be calling my athletic director, and I would have already done it and said, cancel that Texas game next year.
Yeah.
Why are we playing that?
I know.
Yeah, there is a collection of teams based on their brand name and who they are that don't need to play those games. And if they go 10-2, they're more than safe.
Yeah. Did you see Alabama move the South Florida game from 2026 to 2032?
Oh, did they?
They put East Carolina because think about it. What's the difference between South Florida and East Carolina? Miami beat South Florida, the best South Florida team maybe in the history of their program, for goodness sakes, because they're South Florida, and they're getting ranked behind a team that they beat. So there's no incentive to play these difficult non-conference matchups. And I've been telling, but I get accused of SEC bias, even by your co-host on the Big Ten show, Corey Bratta, when you all say you can't have a 9-3 team make the college football playoff. Well, if you can't have a 9-3 team, guess what everybody's going to try to do? They're going to try to artificially inflate the record. Now, it could get to worst case scenario, Mark, where if I was Greg Sankey, I would just go maximal screw you energy, and I would have Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi State, just the bottom feeders of the SEC, only play the top of the SEC and have none of the top play each other. That way, at the end of the year, you're going to have a bunch of 11-1, 10-2, 12-0 SEC teams. And I would tell the committee, you're going to have 8 of these teams. Now go figure it out. That's what we're incentivizing. Now, I don't believe we should go by record. I think record is a key data point.
Sure.
But it shouldn't be the only data point.
No.
Iowa's 8-4, okay? Iowa has 0 wins over teams ranked in the top 25. But they should be ranked in the top 25 because their losses to Oregon and USC validate them more than most teams' wins do. For example, Georgia Tech.
I completely agree. Yes. Unless we could do something about scheduling, and I mean I'm not just talking about these one-off huge matchups in week 1 and 2, but I'm talking about a complete overhaul of scheduling that would make the conference schedules as equitable as possible and would make the non-conference schedules as equitable as possible across the conferences. That's the first thing I think needs to be addressed. Now, that's not going to address the disparity of the quality of the conferences, but that's what it is.
Right. And I mean, like, fight on natties. You say no 3-loss team belongs in the college football playoff. Then why play against, if that's your standard, and again, that's totally fine. Why should anyone play a difficult non-conference game? You're telling me if Oklahoma lost to Alabama 24-23, they should automatically be disbarred from the college football playoff. How much worse is Oklahoma if they lose that game by 1 versus winning it by 2? Like, is it that significant of a difference? They're probably, instead of being the 8th best team, they're what, 10th or 11th at absolute worst? I mean, the lack of nuance in people's discussion around this topic, Mark, has just been, I mean, seriously, it's been jarring.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of people who go on and say, well, Texas is 9-3, they're completely out. Well, Vanderbilt at 10-2, well, they lost the wrong games. Or their schedule's too weak. They haven't proven it enough. All these teams' resumes are so close. And the thing we need to do, and I know you won't like doing it, but I do think we need to get rid of this representation thing. I don't care that the G5 gets a bid. Sorry, you're gone. You get your own playoffs. Congrats. You're like the FCS. And nobody should be guaranteed a spot. No conference. It should have to be earned on the football field. And if there's a year where the ACC deserves 8 bids, then they earned it. If there's a year where the SEC deserves 0 bids, then that's fine. But we shouldn't guarantee 5 different conferences just for representation points.
Well, when you say earned, you understand you're going into a subjective place. So I don't know if you can use the word earned, because earned is based on the selection process or evaluation of a committee.
Okay. Yes, but there is a tangible thing that these teams do on the football field.
Sure.
It's not like they're randomly picked.
No, but winning a conference is also tangible.
It
now,
is.
I blame it on the ACC for, again, poor scheduling, number 1. Number 2, not having a good system to evaluate the teams, to choose the right teams to get to the championship game, but way beyond that, and it's never going to get corrected because it's been the initiative of all this. It's been the origin of all this is the realignment of the conferences becoming so large. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Duke in a conference championship game.
Well, yeah, I know it's crazy to say, but I wouldn't be upset if the ACC just pulled a 2020 Big Ten and just said Miami, you're in the ACC championship game. That would just be as valid as Duke making it because BC beat Syracuse, and therefore their strength of victory is like one game higher than Miami.
Yes, absolutely. I would have no issue with that. Well, I would have issue with it right this second because they've already got tiebreaker rules, and those are the conditions in which these teams are playing under. But if they in the offseason would have said, if we have a tiebreaker because it's likely because of the balance in our conference and because we got too many teams that's going to happen, we are going to have a committee that is going to evaluate these teams and determine, in the case of a tie, who goes. And it's easy to see, even if you get past talent, get past NFL evaluations, just Miami is obliterating most of the teams in the ACC that Duke and Virginia are struggling to defeat. Obviously, Virginia earned it. They went 7-1 in the conference, even though their second loss was against another conference team. But the Miami thing is too bad because they are, I think we can all agree, they appear to be the second best team or the best team and should be in the championship game by, I used to think that NFL tiebreakers were ridiculous that relied on point differential, but that actually at least is a measurement. It's not perfect by any stretch, but at least it's a measurement of dominance against your opponents.
Right.
And Miami would have that all over those other teams.
Right. I just wanted to respond to something, Rob. I'm not whining about your Notre Dame team. It could be any team. If Team A beat Team B, and Team B was ranked ahead of Team A, and it costed Team B a spot in the college football playoff, I would be just as upset because you're attacking the very fundamental of the sport itself, which is why be excited or why care about the regular season for like the first 5 weeks. Sir, if I know at the end of the year Team A could beat Team B, but Team B could be ranked higher than Team A, why would I be excited to watch these big-time non-conference games? Because I know from previous experience, well, the committee could just flip them at the end of the year because they just think they're better. I like these things being settled. I thought that was the whole point of the sport, Mark, was determine the best teams, and that was determined based on the football game and who won on the field. Like, if we don't use that criteria, then why even play the game? If the scoreboard doesn't matter, why play the game? It would be like at the end of the season when Ohio State beat Notre Dame for the national championship. A committee went around and said, you know what? We thought Notre Dame throughout the course of the season, they just looked better than Ohio State. They just looked better.
Well, I will give you actually a better example than that because I know what you're aiming at, because most of us just thought Ohio State was better anyway. We could go through Super Bowl history. We could go to the 16-0 New England Patriots playing the 9-7 New York Giants in the Super Bowl. And would it be ridiculous for anyone to think after the Giants pulled off that upset that actually the Patriots are still a better team? But nobody has an issue with, no, the Giants won the Super Bowl. They are the Super Bowl champions, despite having 7 losses and the Patriots having 1 loss now. There's no dispute about that. They are the Super Bowl champions. Nobody argues it, anything. Even though if you went to a panel of experts, they would say, the Patriots are still better. You can have that opinion, but that doesn't trump the actual result on the field. And everybody is fine with the Super Bowl champion is the Super Bowl champion. Much like this situation, I can have an opinion. Other people can have an opinion that Notre Dame is the better team, but that doesn't matter. Miami won the football game.
Yeah, and I think there's a real chance, Mark, that Miami's going to be slotted right behind Notre Dame and they're not going to flip them. Like, I think that just graphic is going to be jarring because BYU's going to win or lose this week. That's certainty. So therefore, they're going to either jump into the college football playoffs and Notre Dame's going to be out, or they're going to fall behind Miami. And then there's no gap between the two teams, and we have a result.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not gonna flip them, at least according to the odds right now. Miami's like plus 400, 435 to make it, where Notre Dame's minus 355. So, I mean, it's ridiculous.
And again, I totally understand the argument that Notre Dame played at Miami. If you believe in Vegas odds, they lost by a field goal. If they played at a neutral site, it's an even game. And if they played at Notre Dame wins by a field goal. But all of that is hypothetical. The only thing we know, the only thing that is tangible that actually happened was that Miami beat Notre Dame. So, yeah, right. I can't get around that myself. No.
And I hate the stupid, well, these games are at home versus this game is on the road. Not every game you're playing throughout the entire season's at home or in a neutral site. I'm sorry, you do have to play some games on the road. Notre Dame's first round matchup, Mark, I guarantee you, if they make the playoffs, will be on the road. So this idea that, well, it's on the road, therefore it shouldn't count for as much is nonsense to me. Because every team has to play on the road. It just makes no logical sense. Another idea, Mark, just in case we need representation for every conference, is instead of having the conference champion automatically get the spot, just send your highest ranked team by the committee to the spot. I know that's less tangible and less objective and less proven, but it would avoid situations like this where Virginia, we're going to have James Madison / Tulane or North Texas in the college football playoff. Like, we're asking which cow do we want to send to the slaughterhouse is what we're doing. And instead, we're leaving out a Miami team that would be guaranteed in, and along with Notre Dame, we would avoid this entire discussion, and we would get a more competitive football game. Because the 6th seed is now being, like, massively rewarded for absolutely no reason at all. Because if you're the 6th, you're going to be 17 to 21 point favorites. Whereas if you're the 7th seed, it's a pick 'em right now. There shouldn't be that large a disparity between one seed line.
Well, again, I agree with you, but I think the way to solve it is different than maybe what you're thinking, because I don't want that committee to determine this or some kind of ranking. I want the conferences to be able to come up with a system that rightly divides and causes these teams to earn their championship berth in the championship game, if there's going to be a championship game, or do something like what we discussed before and slot the teams on the final weekend, have them play an extra game and actually just anoint the champion. And if Virginia's the champion, that's fine. But
yeah, I just don't think the championship going forward should automatically mean you get into the college football playoff. I think that's the direction they're almost going to have to go, because every year some conference somewhere is going to have a situation like this because they're just too large. Yes. And especially in the ACC and Big 12, you're going to have some team that plays nobody. Even the SEC this year, it's with Texas A&M. You're not determining, ironically, who the best team is in the conference. You're determining like what team is really good, but also has a schedule that allowed them to avoid the pitfalls. So we're not even really determining who the best team is in these conferences under this current format.
That goes back to scheduling. That needs to be corrected, because
I don't know.
Although you can't see in a crystal ball what teams are going to elevate or decline, you can reasonably see during the offseason that Texas A&M's playing Kentucky, South Carolina, etc., and that they are not playing the best teams in the conference, and that's not an equitable schedule.
Right. Well, I would agree if we could just create equitable schedules in college football, But the issue I have is I just don't know how anybody's going to be able to enforce these conferences to get equitable schedules. But I just don't see any incentive for the conferences to do that. I mean, the Big 12 is as close as we're going to get to equitable schedules just because their teams are basically all the same. And every year they're being punished in part because their records are horrendous and because they're a bad conference, but there's a bit of both in there. So,
all right, Darrell.
Yeah,
I look being here.
Yeah, I look forward to Rob calling in tomorrow and explaining why a Notre Dame team that lost to Miami in the final rankings with the same record, Notre Dame should be one spot higher than Miami. I look forward to hearing that call tomorrow. Okay.
Thanks, Darrell. All right, folks. We do appreciate all of you being here at the Voice of College Football. We've gone 2+ hours, and thank all of you for your comments there in the chat. We did get a super chat early on. Hopefully, Falconer X has stuck around long enough, and I doubt it, to hear this. I'll have to amend it slightly, it looks. Miami and Notre Dame are both out, or Miami is in, or F it. Okay, Falconer X, I get your point. All right, folks. Yes, Miami fans are not happy, and I get it. I totally understand. It's obvious that they are getting screwed at this point. Okay, folks, we will be back here on a Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will see you then.